Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Since recently I'm preparing for a very important tournament, I won't be able to follow the footsteps of those recent top events. I won't be able to do recaps on these games. So I am pre-recording this whole series, and this series is about games and positions where my coach at my chess school have taught us. And my coach is an international master, pretty strong, and he is a really good teacher. He has carefully chosen between all of these games and positions to teach us about the strategies, the openings, the middle game and end games. And I think so that is why I'm going to share with you guys, and I think it's also a great way for me to review the things that I have learned at my school. Alright, today we'll be taking a look at a game played in the 2013 World Cup. Actually, I'm not sure specifically which year's World Cup it is, but yeah, you just have to know that this is a really high level tournament. And here, white is Dmitry Andreikin and black is Vladimir Kramnik. Both are well-known players, and no need to introduce them basically. This game was actually like it ended in a draw, but the process of this whole game, like the process of reaching that draw is actually like highs and lows, ups and downs. So let's take a look at how this game proceeded. In the game, oh wait a second. In the game, Dmitry as white played d4 and Kramnik played knight f6. c4 was played and then e6, the Indian game, and after knight f3, d5 was played. It's actually clear that if you go, for example, like bishop b4 here, then this will transfer into the Bogo Indian defense. And actually the Bogo Indian defense is also very similar to the Nimzo Indian defense, that is. Because here if white goes knight c3, bishop b4, this is not the Bogo, but the Nimzo Indian instead. The main difference is that white develops the b1 knight first rather than developing the g1 knight. So you have to try to differentiate between these two openings because they are very similar. In the game, knight f3 was played, and instead of playing bishop b4, which is one of the main lines, Kramnik here played d5, which is a very solid option, and knight c3 was played. Now bishop b7. Still, you can go bishop b4 here, and this will transfer into the queen's gambit declined. After bishop b4, there are something like bishop g5, for example. This is one of the main lines, and I'm going to show it to you guys. Bishop g5 here, h6, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and queen b3. Now this is all very standard. Here you don't retreat the bishop or take the knight on c3, but you can rather here as black go for c5. And after, for example, let's say the best option for white is to c takes d5. And after e takes d5, d takes c5, just trade everything off. And after bishop takes c3, let's just say you take with the queen, and after b takes c3, we transfer it into this position. I know this is a position that has no relations with the game that we're gonna look at, but I just wanted to share this extra variation with you guys. B takes c3. Now reaching this position, it's actually it might be a little bit strange to you guys, especially the pawn structure. White has a double pawn, and the pawn structure on the queen side is basically completely damaged. But black also has this weak d5 center isolated pawn. Both sides have compensations for their pawn structure, destroyed pawn structure. For white, the speed of development, you can see that white is slightly faster in development than black is, and will keep attacking the d5 pawn. And for black is gonna develop and attack the c5 pawn, that's for sure. Alright, but of course this has nothing to do with the game, and let's go back. I just showed you guys the line with bishop b4, one of the main lines, and instead in the game bishop b7 was played, also one of the main lines as well. Bishop f4 and short castle. Here, again, there are many options for white, like e3, rook c1, a3 as well. In the game, a3 was played actually, but you can also go for e3. But now probably after e3 there are some sort of c5 ideas, which is unclear. And if you go, for example, like rook c1, there's actually also c5. So no matter what you do here as white, black will most likely go for c5. In the game, a3 was played, and now c5 is actually not the best option, because after d takes c5, bishop takes c5, the main problem is that now, well, actually, it's not a big difference, but after some sort of queen c2 ideas and knight c6, there's always some b4 ideas coming up, because, like white has already gone for a3, but besides supporting b4, a3 also defends the b4 square, controlling it and preventing any knight b4, bishop b4 ideas in the future for black. So a3 is actually always a very necessary move to be played in the Queen's Gambit declined. And a3 was played here by Dmitry. Here Kramnik played the move b6, very logical. Supporting c5 as well as red to fianchetto the bishop b7. And in the game, e3 was played and now c5. The main difference is that if you take with d takes c5 right now, there's actually b takes c5. Black is not going to take with the bishop anymore, because if you take with the bishop, b4 is an option for white, but you can also just go c takes d5, and after e takes d5, you can now just, you are like creating a huge weakness in black's territory, and this pawn, center as isolated pawn, will be even weaker, especially in the endgame. E takes d5, and if you just play something like knight takes d5, saying that I'm not going to create a weakness like that, but after, let's say, knight takes, you have to, if you take, you'll create the weakness again, but if you take with the queen, well, I'll just trade everything off. There it is, the pawn on d5 again. And b4 ideas coming up, rook c1, white should be more convenient to play in this position. Alright, let's go back to see how the actual game proceeded. In the game, queen c2 was played. A little bit too solid, actually. Here you can actually both d takes c5 and c takes d5 are all possible ideas. You can also just develop your own pieces with bishop e2. Everything is fine here for white, basically, as long as you don't do something risky. Queen c2 was played, however, a slight inaccuracy, but still playable, I guess. In the game, c takes d4 was played. Now the main point is that here another very attractive option is for black to go bishop b7, which is okay, but during the class, my coach told us that after bishop b7, which is not a very good move, there's d takes c5, and after b takes c5, rook d1. Now, with accurate play like queen b6 here, everything is gonna be fine, but you can see that there's just too many pressure on this d5 pawn. And after, for example, queen b6, first of all, moving away from this pin, now let's say white just, take everything, and after e takes d5, bishop e2, everything, this pawn on d5 as well as the c5 pawn will become weaknesses in the future after, for example, knight a4 threats coming up and also knight e4 ideas. These two pawns, they are floating in the center. No, the other pawns cannot reach these two pawns, which means that they can only be defended by the pieces, and sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it can be a really bad thing to have these kinds of pawn structure. But anyways, c takes d4 was played in the game, and here knight takes d4. If you take with the pawn here, e takes d4, there's now knight c6, you're creating your own weakness now on d4 for white, which is kind of unnecessary. That is why you take with the knight, and Dmitry did play knight d4 in the game. Bishop b7, very logical, and rook d1, still putting a lot of pressure on the d file. And here, knight bd7 was played, also very logical, threatening to go e5 as well as developing the piece as well as blockading this d file. It's a very useful move actually. And in the game, c takes d5 was played. Now, You might say, what happens if black goes e5? Well, actually, in the game, e5 was played, but you can just figure everything out just by looking at the eval bar that it's still pretty much equalized, which means that after e5, there's gonna be some way for white to maintain the piece. Now, here the best option for black is actually not to go e5, but to play knight d5. And after knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, here white can actually go bishop b5 here, gaining full control of the c6 square, as well as sometimes threatening to take on d7 and play e4. Now this is actually, white will have more counterplay here on the queen side as well as in the center. But here instead, e5 was played, which is also fine. But here, white does need to find the best reply here in order to stay better. And can you see what is the best move here? I mean, if you just play anything normal, you'll definitely lose one of the pieces because this is a fork and the pawn is well being defended by the knight. What can white do here to keep the piece? Well, I mean, you can definitely go, for example, like knight f5, and after e takes f4, there's d6 to trap this bishop. But after bishop takes d6, let's say knight takes d6, the position is still kind of unclear after queen, not queen c8, but queen c7 here. And I mean, the king is still in the center, your pieces are still undeveloped, and the bishop is like putting pressure on the g2 pawn as well. Everything is kind of complicated. And here the best option is actually for white to take on f4. But do you really have the courage to do so? Because you're opening up this e-file completely and your king is wide open, like on the e-file. So everything is actually really complicated. But however, knight f5 is not even the best reply here. The best reply here, it is not knight f5, it is not d6, but it is actually for you to go knight c6. Now, this is not like a very brilliant move or whatsoever, but this is a move that is actually like slightly better than all of the other options. And after knight c6, suddenly you realize that I'm attacking the queen as well as the bishop, and of course here you have to take on c6 basically, because if you run away with the queen, there's now knight takes e5, winning the e5 pawn. So basically, black needs to take on c6. And this is what happened in the game. And after d takes c6, e takes f4. And here, e takes f4 was played, the best option. But like things are not over yet. Even though Kramnik is still up a pawn, but his pieces are all like pinned, and everything is really like messy. In the game, he gobbled up a second pawn with bishop a3, which is pretty like one of the best moves, because if you don't do that, then I mean you are like, in other words, giving back the piece. So why not gobble up a pawn first? And here I want you guys to pause and think, which piece will you take? Take on the a3 bishop or take this d7 knight? It's actually a really crucial option to make here. And in the game, Dmitry played the worst option. So let's see, can you choose the correct one? Two options, you have to choose between one of them, and can you get the right one? Well, actually here, in the game, b takes a3 was played, and this is like the worst option. The best option, as you can see, is to go c takes d7. Because c takes d7, well, of course, this is all pure calculation. And after, like, let's say queen e7 check, for example, you can also just go bishop b4, but bishop b4 is somehow a little bit unhuman-like move. Because now bishop b4, I mean, even if black had found this move, white can just calmly go bishop b2 and prepare for short castle. So let's see what happens after queen e7, which is probably having a higher possibility to be played in an actual game. Bishop b2, bishop b4, and short castle, rook fd8. Of course, the d7 pawn is gonna fall, but before completely giving up that pawn, white can give a few tries here. After bishop f3, attack the rook, rook a b8, rook f1, attack the queen, queen c5, rook e5, queen c4, queen a4, and queen f4, rook e3. Now, of course, this is all pure calculation, and of course, in the actual game, it's kind of hard to get to this point. But I'm just gonna tell you guys that during this stage of the game, like at this specific position, white is already winning, +2 already. And the rest you guys just have to analyze them yourself. But this is not what happened in the game, however. In the game, b takes a3 was played, and this is just kind of like a slight miscalculation by Dmitry. After b takes a3, now he is just giving his opponent 2 knights versus knight and bishop. I'm not saying like it's a very worst pairing, but now you can just see what will happen in the actual game. Queen e8 first, check, running away from the pin as well. Bishop e2 and knight c5. The c6 pawn is gonna fall, and compared to the position where with c takes d7, the pawn is actually not gonna be taken that easily by black. Whereas compared here after knight c5, the c6 pawn is just completely hanging, and there's nothing that white can do but to go short castle to get the king to safety. But now everything is back on track again for black. And after bishop f3 here, knight c e4 was played, and after rook c1, defending the c2 queen, and queen takes c3. But now after taking all of the pieces here, it's actually very tricky because you cannot take on a8 here because you'll be losing after knight e2, king h1, and knight c1. You're just down a full piece basically here. But after knight c3 here in the game, rook takes c3 was played, and after rook a c8, both sides here, they are just playing like this is just a very clean position leading to a draw. Rook a c8, rook f c1, trading everything off, rook e8. Okay, maybe here white has a slight chance of winning, like at least to play a few more moves and try to see if black will make a mistake or not. And it's actually here very easy for black to make a mistake because bishop versus knight, this knight is actually not in its best form. It is happy to go to d7, then knight c5, but that will take 2 moves, and white is gonna threaten to go rook c7 on the next move to pressure the a7 pawn. So there's no time for black to go knight d7 yet. And right now, black is also threatening to go rook e1, checkmate. And of course, white saw that and played g4 in the game. And after king f8, king activity in the endgame is very important. Black is now getting the king to the center. And after g5, knight g8. You can also just go, for example, like knight e4 or rook e1, but knight g8 is the most clean way to draw here. And after king g2, g6 here, h4, knight e7, rook c7, and knight f5. Now, it's actually best for white to not do something risky here, because if you go for something like rook e7 here, you're gonna be in some trouble. I mean, still the position is a draw, but now after knight h4, king g3, turning into a rook and pawn endgame, black has the better pawn structure. Still, it is a draw, but if you play it like that way, like black may not want to agree to a draw, and black will like prefer to keep on playing. But however, in the game, Dmitry just played very calmly with h5, and after rook e7, both sides agreed to a draw. Like here, they made 3 repetitions, and after like this, a draw was agreed at this point. What can I say about this game? This game is actually, like, both sides played pretty well positionally. Basically, there are no tactics in this game. The only thing that white somehow made a mistake here is with b takes a3. Where is it? Let me find it. It's here. After bishop a3, the only mistake that white here made is to choose between b takes a3 or c takes d7. C takes d7, I think white will have a bigger chance of winning, but after b takes a3, it's just gonna end in a draw, and it's a very normal result. And for black, I think Kramnik played pretty well. He defended everything well, and somehow he kind of went worse in the opening part, but it doesn't matter. In the middle game and in the end game, he managed to hold the draw. And this game is just kind of like a perfect game played by 2 sides. It's not full of highs and lows, ups and downs, but still worth for us to like investigate in and to like to analyze this game. Alright, so I hope you guys learned something from this game as well as enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!